Welcome everybody back to Flow Sales. Today we are honored to have Chris Atwell in the virtual studio with us. He was kind enough to give us some of his time. I'm excited for this one. Chris has a really interesting background. I guess you've been a music producer in the past. You've worked in sales, obviously, and then you also own a company now that trains manufacturing sales reps specifically to perform better. So I think that's a pretty cool combination. So tell us your story, man. Tell us where you've been, what you're working on.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kurt and Craig. Really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. So my background, if you go way back, I grew up a military brat. So my father was in the Army, and I moved around the country here in Canada almost every year of my childhood. And as I stepped into adulthood, I played a lot of music and started college studying business. And over those years, I started a music company, which did music promotional music stuff. And I started making music myself, performing, recording albums, selling albums. And that was my first foray into business itself, running my own business. But I jumped into the sales realm, where I've got a background working in multiple sales functions, all the way from inside sales through to sales leadership and developing strategies for sales teams to really hit the ground running hard and create an environment where they're producing top results. And I've done that in the logistics world, the building supplies and distribution world, as well as the manufacturing world. All great experiences that allowed me to taste every single angle of sales, from, as I mentioned, inside sales to technical sales to managing a team of my own and working closely with the principals and the presidents of the company. So I recently started doing full-time. I say recently, I've been doing this since 2021, where I work directly with manufacturers rep agency owners and understanding what challenges they're faced with in their business, what direction they want to take their business, and helping them get really clear on that vision so that they can work on their business rather than in it, and develop a high-performing team of their own so they can take their business to the next level.
How did you manufacturing sales rep specifically is such a niche in the sales world, right? Like, how did you land there?
When I was working for a plumbing manufacturer years ago, I developed the technical sales division of that company. So they reached out to me. I was working for a wholesale distributor prior to that in a national accounts role, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for someone to figure out how we can obtain specification of our product and drive sales in the long term by getting products included in the construction documents and seeing it through to the purchase of that product once the project is being built." And as I was building that team and the strategy for that business, it involved working with local manufacturers rep agencies. These are companies that you partner with when you're a manufacturer to go and represent your product from a sales and marketing standpoint in different territories across North America, is what I was responsible for. And when I did that, I really connected with those manufacturers rep agencies. Incredible business model that we had. We would work together collaboratively on driving forward the strategy that I had put into place. And that's where it all started and developed from there.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people don't even know what a manufacturer's rep
Right.
is. I mean, I'm sure I don't think my kids know. I've tried to explain it, and it's funny when you tell somebody, like, I'm a manufacturer's rep, and they're like, well, what is that? I mean, 9 times out of 10, that's what you get. So that's it. That's a cool story.
Yeah, when I first started working in distribution, I had no idea what a manufacturer's rep was either. And then as they were knocking on the door, I started to understand what their role was. But when I worked closely with them in the capacity that I just described over a decade ago, I really started to understand what it really takes to represent multiple lines. What I mean by lines is a manufacturer's rep will have anywhere from 5 to 25 different manufacturers that they represent and go to market with and sell. There's a lot of challenges that come with that, and there's a lot of competition that comes with that. I certainly appreciate what they do in the marketplace.
How did you have success? We just had Scott, president of Quell, on our show a little while ago, and he mentioned how he also, when he first started at Quell, he started the manufacturing sales rep initiative. He said, if you want to grow, you got to get reps. and he believes in the model. And so I'm assuming can you walk us through that process for you of how you worked with, like, in the shoes of a manufacturer, for example, that doesn't have reps or is thinking about using reps. What are the things they need to think about to take advantage of the model?
Yeah, great question. I've worked in both scenarios. I've worked for a manufacturer where we had strictly factory people that did all the legwork of building the relationships with the distribution partners, the end users in the marketplace, and to a certain extent, depending on the product type, those product specifications that I was talking about. And one of the things that manufacturers should keep in mind is that how far can you extend your current resources, right? So if you've got a whole country to cover, right, like the United States, and you've got 6 regional sales managers that are responsible for covering the entire country and they're factory guys, are they going to be able to reach every single lead, every single project, every single end user alone? Or is there a better way? And depending on the product, it might be perfectly capable of doing that. But in some cases, leveraging manufacturers' rep agencies, they are the experts in their territories. They've got their pulse on what's happening in the marketplace. They've got relationships with the end users and the wholesale partners. They've oftentimes got technology in place that they can leverage to share and communicate information back and forth to the manufacturer. And it becomes an extension of your sales team, which allows you to get more touch points in the marketplace. So the key thing to ask is, are the resources that I currently have going to have the impact that I need to drive my business forward? Or is there an opportunity to extend my reach by tapping into another type of resource like a manufacturer's rep agency?
Got it. And then on the manufacturing rep agency side, because you do a lot of this work, right, in your company, when you go in to consult with a manufacturing sales rep firm, what are some of the first things that you try to dig into help optimize their sales and what their operations?
I always start at the top, right? These agencies are generally owned by a private business owner, maybe a couple of partners, right, that have been in it. Oftentimes it's generational. You've got a business that's being handed down from a father to son or father to daughter, grandfather to son to daughter. And there's multi-generational things that happen here. So what you notice is they've been doing business a certain way for a long time. Right. And as it gets handed down and there's some sort of transition, and that's where oftentimes where I find myself stepping in is, okay, are you clear on the direction of your business? So one of the first questions that I typically ask one of these owners is, perfect world, 1 year from now, everything's aligning. It's going exactly as you planned. Tell me what's happening in your business that's making it run so smoothly. And usually what that does is it sparks a level of information that maybe they're not fully thinking about, could be living in their subconscious, but they start thinking about that vision a little more clearly, right? So I ask, can you tell me about what's happening in your business in a perfect world 1 year from now that's making it so successful?
Yeah, and I think that's something that, as a rep, you get kind of caught up in the doing, and then you don't take as much time to have those kinds of conversations to be able to really dig down and say, all right, to your question, like, what does it look like? What do you mean? What's going on? I mean, it's just you don't think about those things sometimes, and we all should more. You said it best: is like you're working in the business so much. Sometimes the working on it takes a back seat. To really live up to the potential of your rep firm, you got to do both. I mean, you got to work in it, but you truly got to work on it. Because if you're not, then sometimes you're just doing the same things over and over again, and you're successful. But what could you be if you were able to work on the business, if you were able to answer that question you just posed, right out of the gate? This is what it looks like. This is what we're doing. So I think that's a good question to kick it off, because I'm sure sometimes you probably get a lot of blank stares, like, I don't know, let me think about that, because a lot of times you don't take time to think about those things.
Yeah, I certainly tend to open up the conversation around what could it look like, right? They may not have thought about it, but at least you can start thinking about it. And that's where there's this evolution happening within agencies that I work with, where, to your point, agency owners have been so used to working in wearing multiple hats, right? You're doing sales, you're doing HR, you're hiring, you're probably running all the technology. You're the one who's setting up Microsoft 365, right? And you're the admin guy. You've got so much on your plate and you're balancing all these plates you're juggling. And you're building a sales team, and these sales team members are very tactical. They're going out, they're doing their thing, and they're reporting back. And what I've noticed over time is, as I work with agency owners who start getting clear about what the vision is a year from now, 5 years from now, and make that shift to working on the business, their leadership role changes. Their leadership role changes from being a giving direction to more of an empowering position, where they're asking powerful questions to their team and getting them to think for themselves, where they're starting to let go of a lot of these duties that they've been doing in their business forever, and trusting in other team members to take it on and give them that skill set, expanding their skill sets as a team, hiring sales managers in many cases. I know countless agencies that the owner is the sales manager, right? These kinds of things. So getting clear on that vision is always a critical step in moving forward.
There's some patterns. I mean, you alluded to one just now, having sales managers. Are there patterns you see across the board in talking to a lot of these rep firms, that these are maybe blind spots you see a lot, or things that are higher leverage for these folks to be thinking about that maybe they don't think about as much?
Yeah, absolutely. So not necessarily blind spots, but definitely something worth thinking about if you haven't already. One, many of these agency owners champion every single initiative within the organization, right? So rolling out a new CRM, for example, that's a big trend in the industry right now, right? People are bringing on software like Salesforce, RepFabric, HubSpot, Odoo, Microsoft Dynamics, whatever it is, to get better at collecting data from their sales force on what's happening down the pipeline when it comes to project opportunities and tracking opportunities in general, as well as activities and contact management. One thing that happens is that if you're already running the whole business and you want to champion that project as well, it's not going to roll out as effectively as you would hope, right? Good intentions, taking ownership of it, may feel like it's going to get done. But one of the things that I've noticed as a trend in the industry is when the agency owners are championing rollouts of new technology, oftentimes those rollouts are very slow and adoption is very weak. So considering empowering a team member, a senior member of the team, to become the champion and hold them accountable to becoming the expert and rolling a new technology platform out is something that could be very helpful. Same around sales management, right? Agency owners have built amazing relationships with their partners in the field, right? And sometimes they've known these people for 20 years and they're the go-to resource. They're running this multi-million-dollar business and this customer calls them every day and they pick up the phone and welcome the call and don't want to lose that loyalty. And how sustainable is that as you age in your business as an owner and you're looking for somebody to take over the business one day? How are you going to do that effectively if you own all the relationships down the road? So this is where the potential of hiring managers, a sales manager, where that person can build the trust and rapport with these customers down the road, can be very helpful and will free up time for you so that you're focusing on the business in a different capacity. But it doesn't mean your relationship with those customers ends. You can still reach out to them and take them out and be a part of that. But all the day-to-day nitty-gritty, the pricing requests and all of those things, why is an owner doing that?
Yeah, somebody had an old regional manager for one of our factories, Britty Hunt. Shout out to Britty. He's retired. The way he put it, as a baseball analogy, he would say, "Look, if you're the manager of the baseball team, it's the ninth inning. You got to go to the bullpen, call in the left-hander, the closer. You can't call yourself in on that as the manager. You can't walk out there and take the ball and throw it. You got to have faith in that person that you're bringing in." The empower them so when they get on the mound, they're able to deliver. And when you kind of put it like that, is there's a lot of times you just can't insert yourself as the principal of the agency. You got to have the right folks. We're lucky we have that, and that's one of the things I've tried to do a better job of the past few years is turning loose some of those things. I think my crowd would probably argue that there's some things I do better than others of turning it loose. And there's probably a lot more I need to turn it loose. But that's an important thing, I think, as you grow and as an organization. It's having those people that can lead those initiatives, that they can take the ball and run with it. I think that's important. And sometimes that's hard. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit that's been a hard thing because you have those relationships with those customers. And when you're somewhat removed from it, from in the weeds with them every day, that's hard because it's customers become your friends, and it's something that you have a hard time. You're not walking away from it, but you're just in a different role, and that's a challenge sometimes. So I'm sure you struggle with that when you got to sit down with people like me and say, look, you got to step back, and you got to, like you said before, working on the business. I'm sure you see that a lot, for sure.
Yeah, and I empathize because you've been in the weeds with these people. You're on the front lines, right? You get it. You know what it's like being out in the field, and these people trust in you, and they see you as their go-to resource. So of course, it's going to be difficult to walk away from your friend like that. I get it. The idea is, how can you build new friendships and keep that communication open so that it doesn't feel like you're breaking up or things are slipping through the cracks.
Yeah, just like you mentioned too, I mean, part of it is the relationships, but the technology side you mentioned, we've seen it too when people are looking at flow, right? Oftentimes, if they working with someone the other week, they put someone in their organization in charge of the rollout initiative, right? They're like, you own it. This is what I want to do as the agency owner. This is why I want to do it. But you own this. You meet with them. You implement it. You train everybody, and then that's it. And then we found actually that works way smoother, right? Because that person then owns it. They have more time to dedicate to it, and they can push it through and get the results.
Yeah, the important piece in all of this is to be clear on what are the objectives and the goals, what steps are being taken to achieve them, and how are you going to measure the progress along the way. You can't grow what you can't measure. You can't implement what you can't measure. So you need to know what the milestones are. What does accomplishment look like, achieving that end goal? And if things aren't being done properly, that you're pivoting so that you're getting back on track. And that's where communication, feedback, and ongoing communication is critical for any project, for any relationship. You want to make sure that you're in the know and you're getting updated, you're pivoting when it's necessary, and supporting the implementer in a way that they've got all the tools and the resources necessarily to get the job done.
Well, you mentioned measurement. That's an interesting topic, right? Because on the one hand, you could measure too many things, or you could measure the wrong things. So how do you think about what are the right things that I should be measuring that actually help and don't just are a distraction or even worse, lead me down the wrong path because I'm measuring the wrong thing?
And that's where clarity on the objectives comes in. You could set 1,000,000 goals in your business every day, set new goals and objectives. But as long as you're really clear on what are the core initiatives, what are the really important initiatives that are going to drive 80% of my total revenue, 80% of the results that I need in my business, and highlight those particular objectives. The other ones, you can certainly check in on them occasionally, but they're not having the same level of impact as those primary core objectives would. So by identifying what those initiatives are and then building in measurables within that, using simple tools, like SMART goal setting, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. So one of the most effective measurables is time. So if you establish that this part of this project or this part of this sale or this part of this activity needs to be completed by this date, you can certainly measure that quite effectively, right? So the idea is to identify what's most critical, set measurables in place for those, and work from there.
If there's anything else you've seen that you think is super critical or important to share, and also how can people work with you, right, and reach out to you?
Absolutely. So one of the most important things for any principal or any sales leader in any industry is taking care of yourself first, right? And this is where people have asked me, what are the most important things that any leader should consider? Well, the first one is take care of your own health and well-being first. Because if you're sharp and you're healthy, you're going to be able to show up for your team, for your business, your family at a much higher level. And that's where your health and well-being trumps anything in business because everything else follows. From there, what I make sure that I keep everyone in tune with is know your numbers. There are countless challenges in running an agency where you get delayed information from your manufacturers. You might not have up-to-date sales figures and stuff like this, which may cause you to not look at it at all. But by knowing your numbers, from the first knowing your objectives and your goals, and then tracking and measuring along the way, you're going to have a much better understanding of where you are in your business so that you can communicate that to your team and help them pivot and make the necessary decisions strategically in order to support moving towards the goals. So know your numbers. Health, wellness, know your numbers. Number 3 is create the habits and the routines in your day-to-day to support your health and well-being and work towards your numbers and your objectives. And that's where I help. Is I assist you in getting really clear on the vision of your business, establishing those goals and objectives around personal and business to support the 3 things we just discussed, and hold you accountable to it along the way so that you can step up in your leadership, let go of the things that might be holding you back from working on the business rather than in it, empower your team into high performance by supporting them rather than directing them and helping them think critically and more strategically while you're doing the same so that you can grow your business to the next level.
Yeah, it's funny. So, like number one, the first point of taking care of yourself, that's like for me personally, that's a roller coaster. There's times I'm like, yeah, I'm on it, feeling good, working out, doing what I'm, quiet times, things like that, doing great. And then it's just, like I said, it's just a roller coaster. Number two, the numbers. I mean, that's really what drove me to contact Curtis and his team at Data Crunch. Was I was tired of not knowing where we stand as a company, and we're having to make decisions on information that I didn't trust. And that's no way to run a business. I don't care what business you're running. So that was a huge point. Was I got to know our numbers. We got to be able to feel sound and secure that what we're looking at is going to be able to direct us to make these decisions that are going to impact us for the next year, 5 years, and 10 years in some cases. And then the habit piece. I mean, that's a huge thing. Is you got these 2 things, but you got to ingrain them into your day to day, right? And I think that's something that we can do a better job, me personally as well. So now you hit the nail. I mean, you're speaking to me. I appreciate the reminder. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. The best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. You can search Chris Atwell on LinkedIn, and I'm quite active on there and always happy to connect. My website is mindset-conquest.com. And my agency, my business practice is really focused on the rep agency owners. So I help rep agency owners inspire and develop high performing teams while creating more free time for themselves. And my vision is to be the premier partner for agency owners looking for transformational change in their business. So I invite you to reach out anytime, connect with me, and happy to have a conversation.
That's awesome.
Good
That's
deal.
that's an awesome vision. Thanks again for being here, Chris.
Yeah, appreciate it. Nice to meet you. Thanks for all the insight.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Kurt. Have yourselves a great day.